Hello and good morning to everyone. It's nice to see you all. Before I say a few words as a sort of initial address that I prepared, I would like to ask Mr. Tomaž Zalaznik, the director of the Institute Nova Revija for the Humanities, who, as you know, is one of the organizers of this conference, to say a few words at the opening of this conference. Please.
Dear colleagues, a good 3 years ago, when Dan Comel, who leads the research activities of our institute, presented a proposal for the organization of a conference, we thought that was a great idea. And when we, in cooperation with the Central and East European Society for Phenomenology, also determined the framework of the conference, this conference became very relevant. I must admit that I personally, and also my colleagues at the Institute, were looking forward to meeting you in person. Those we already know through the Forum for the Humanities, as well as those we have not yet met. Each conference also brings with it good measure of sociability, goodwill, and good mood through informal, relaxed conversations. Unfortunately, we have to give it all up. Facing the COVID epidemic, at first we have to reschedule the conference to be now organized through the digital platform Zoom. That is our reality today. But we still hope that in the future we will be able to organize its continuation and a personal meeting with at least some of you at the presentation of the conference publication. Now, before giving the floor, Zoom, to my colleagues, let me personally thank to Witold Płotka, Christian Ciochan, all these Wagners for their participation in the preparation of the conference, and the members of the organizing committee, Dan Comel, Branko Klun, and with especially thanks to Andrej Božič. He took on himself the executive, editorial, and organizational role of ensuring that everything was ready for the successful implementation of the conference. I wish everyone a successful conference and look forward to a personal meeting after COVID. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this words of thanks. Now I will say a few. I have prepared a sort of opening address to welcome you all to this conference. Esteemed colleagues, it is a great honor and a true pleasure for me, both as a member of the organizing committee, as well as a representative of the Institute Nova Revija for the Humanities and the Journal of Phenomenology and Hermeneutics Phenomena, to have been asked and hence to be able to welcome you all to the 6th conference of the Central and East European Society for Phenomenology, which will in the following few days take place online under the title Phenomenology and Sociality. Since its so-called official commencement with Edmund Husserl more than 100 years ago, the phenomenological movement with its under and its overcurrents, as well as its countercurrents, has developed into a richly ramified field of philosophical research that entails not only the initially perhaps predominant and throughout its history continuously refined epistemological concerns, but has also upon their foundation come to encompass a multitude of realms determining humanity in the different dimensions of its situatedness within the world. However, both the tradition as well as the contemporaneity of phenomenology, its various formulations and its manifold transformations, demonstrate that precisely the discussion of sociality can be considered as one of its fundamental trains of thought and as well as strains of thought. In fact, not only all philosophers, but also scientists and artists and intellectuals and humanists who can, or could at least, be, even if only solely indirectly associated with the movement, yet who also share what can be recognized as the essential principles of the specifically phenomenological approach to the question of the social, are too numerous to name. And I do not dare to venture here and now such a recounting. The theoretical considerations of the social, whether is it the first or the second nature of the human being, remains to be considered, but of the social nature of the human being, the wealth of which, equally many-layered, ranges from extensive elaborations regarding individual and concrete basic phenomena of interpersonal relationships, to contemplations on the complex and the complexity of the irreducible, the undeniable alterity of the other, to phenomenologically comprehensive conceptualization of the systemically co-constitutive or ontological elements of society, of societies as such. So these considerations led, moreover, also sometimes, as the renowned, somewhat infamously or ill-reputed cases of Martin Heidegger or Jan Patočka illuminate, with diametrically opposed consequences, to the efforts of practical effectuations and political realizations of the projects, the projections of the phenomenological thought. Phenomenology, indeed, did help shape the paradoxically contradictory, intricate image of the 20th century. For the moment, in a parallactically personal parenthesis, I put aside the question, which might hopefully nonetheless be raised by the upcoming proceedings, whether phenomenology can either, on the one hand, through the impossibility of modest or moderate social change by way of solipsistic enactment, or on the other hand, through the uncertain return of a convoluted, convulsive sociality by way of mass engagement, from its resignation to the self-sufficiency of the academic sphere, to which, to a certain degree, it remains, as much of the humanities today, confined, once and yet again strive to become a transformative factor, an actor of sorts. Could it, nay, put better, should it, despite all, at all endeavor, for better or for worse, to do so for the future of the 21st century? The program of the conference, following the thematic proposals of the programmatic outline, was conceived with the intention to enable a reflection and the reflection upon the past, the present, and the future of the abundantly heterogeneous phenomenological philosophy. While on the one hand, the parallel sessions, which are reserved for the presentations of individual papers and which will take place within the webinars Zoom 1, Zoom 2, and Zoom 3, attempt to combine the submitted contributions into topically meaningful panels, analytically addressing particular issues that circumscribe phenomenology in its relation to the problem of sociality, by dedicating attention to a detailed deliberation not only upon its progression, its evolution, and its potential revolutions through the times of unmistakably marked by the central philosophical personality of Husserl and Heidegger, by their successors and by their adversary, but deliberations also upon the exigency confronting it with the current situation of the world, denoted and decried by multiply nefarious health, economic, ecological, and other crises. Yet thereby also, and likewise incorporating the laterality of a critical gaze, delineating, sometimes inherently and sometimes per negationem, the borders of its legitimate relevance. So while on the one hand, the parallel sessions are intended to put accents on particular issues of the phenomenological movement, the purpose of the joint sessions scheduled for the end of each day within the webinar Zoom 1, on the other hand, is to proffer an open space. Otherwise, in the setting of an on-site event reserved for the moments shared among participants between sessions, of a somewhat semi-formal or less formal forum for conversations, both within the section titled Issues about the latest academic publications of journals or the matters of international collaboration in the business affairs of the CEESP, as well as within the section Challenges and Perspectives of Phenomenology, about the ties implicitly or explicitly binding phenomenological thought with societal movements of yesterday, today, and who knows, perhaps tomorrow. Especially the latter, in a sense, retro and prospective sessions focused respectively upon a question providing solely the initial incentive for a spontaneous, more or less spontaneous exchange of ideas, wherein also presentations of recent short presentations of recent publications, book publications, which I'm sure many of you have authored or have co-edited or otherwise prepared or been involved in their preparation. So these sessions would like to sketch out, at least in a rough draft, the potentiality of a synthetic, integrative view on the conference proceedings. So therefore, I would like to politely invite you all to return after the end of the day's parallel sessions to the webinar Zoom 1 to discuss these issues, which I, when preparing the program, I attempted to circumscribe them within a question that would serve as just a starting point for a conversation. The preparation of a conference during the ongoing plague of the COVID-19 pandemic presents, particularly for a comparatively small research organization such as the Institute Nova Revija for the Humanities, which is also the publisher of the Phainomena journal, a uniquely demanding undertaking, especially as we first tried to organize a classical on-site gathering. Later on, we had to change that to the hybrid event, and later on resort to this Zoom version of the conference. I regret to inform you of further unfortunate changes in the conference program caused by unforeseen last-minute cancellations. Primarily due to health reasons, some of the panel sessions needed to be partially remodeled or completely withdrawn. Accordingly, today's Zoom 3 session, entitled The Threat of Totalitarianism, scheduled between 11:30 and 13:30, will not take place. Similarly, the Zoom 3 session Society and Modes of Transcendence, which was planned for Saturday, December 4th, between 11:30 and 13:30, is also cancelled, unfortunately. There are just yesterday evening and even this morning, I received a couple of more, 2 more cancellations, and we will have to somehow incorporate these issues over the course of the proceedings. Hopefully, we can resolve them to satisfy all the parties, which unfortunately get involved when such things occur. On behalf of the organizers, I would thus like to once again extend our sincere apologies to all the participants for the late changes in the format and the program of the conference. And at the same time, also thank you for the kindness of your understanding, as well as the graciousness of your patience throughout the entire organizational process. In conclusion of the opening address, I would like to, on behalf of the organizing institutions, both the researchers and the administrative staff of the Institute Nova Revija for the Humanities, as well as the editorial board of the Journal of Phenomenology and Hermeneutics, Phainomena, extend our heartfelt gratitude, as also Mr. Zalaznik has already done, to the Central and East European Society for Phenomenology and the members of its executive committee, the president, Witold Płotka, the vice president, Christian Kjokan, and the secretary, Uldis Wegners, for the support offered during the preparations and for the trust rendered to us by conferring upon us the responsibility of the organization of the present conference. I would also like to personally thank the management of the Institute Nova Revija for the Humanities, especially the director, Mr. Zalaznik, and also the head of research activities, Professor Dr. Dejan Komel, who has recently, unfortunately, fallen ill and will most likely not be participating to the degree that was intended first. So I'd like to thank them all for assigning me the role and the task of sort of an organizational coordinator. Likewise, I thank my colleague from the Institute Nova Revija for Mr. Žiga Stopar, for his help both in the preparation of the conference materials as well as in the administration of the Zoom webinars. Finally, and above all, I would like to cordially thank all of you, all the participants and all the attendees for the magnanimity of being willing to contribute to the conference your philosophical insight and human, albeit remote presence. I thank you all. In the hope that you enjoy the conference, I wish you all pleasant and productive debates regarding the many-faceted problems of phenomenology and sociality during the next 3 days. So I thank you for your kind attention during this opening address. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrej, for this information. Thank you also to Professor Zalaznik for a welcome address. And on behalf of the board of the Central and East European Society for Phenomenology, it is my great pleasure and honor to welcome you all to the 6th conference of the Society, co-organized this year together with the Institute Nova Revija for the Humanities in Ljubljana. The fact that we can meet online today is even more important, given that a year ago we were unable to organize the annual conference. Without conferences, exchanges, and discussions, there is no philosophy understood as a communal enterprise. For this reason, I do hope that this year's meeting will give us a boost for our divergent explorations in both systematic and historical studies in and on phenomenology. The main task of the meeting is to provide an efficient platform for presenting and discussing new investigations within phenomenology. Of course, this meeting is strictly connected with the Society's main task, namely to promote phenomenology and to connect scholars interested in the heritage of the phenomenological movement. Especially today, when the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic makes international travels difficult or, our case, even impossible, the need to confront our ideas is of primal importance. This year's topic, Phenomenology and Sociality, challenges a traditional reading of phenomenology, which accuses Husserl for being focused on a solitary and non-worldly subject. Many years ago, phenomenology was regarded mainly as a solitary discipline, which in the end falls into the trap of subjectivism and thus relativism. Yet, we know today that this early account of phenomenology was misleading. Phenomenology examines the phenomenon of sociality on many intertwined levels, as shown by, for instance, Husserl himself, but also by Heidegger, Stein, Gerwig, Schütz, or more recently by Zahavi. Phenomenology examines many phenomena constituted intersubjectively. The problem of society, communal subject, or joint actions are widely discussed in today's scholarly literature, also from the phenomenological point of view. However, there is still a lot to do in this regard. After all, phenomenology teaches us that every rigorous investigation requires a thorough discussion, reassessment, and eventual verification. Surprisingly, a perfect illustration of the immanent movement of phenomenology from a solitary subject to community-based philosophizing is provided by Husserl's Cartesian Meditations, a book that, on the face of it, seems to present only the solipsistic account of philosophizing. In the introduction to his work, Husserl complains about the condition of philosophy in general. As seen by him, the crisis of philosophy consists in creating, as he puts it, philosophical literature. According to the diagnosis from the Cartesian Meditations, the philosophical literature drives out a serious discussion of conflicting theories. As a result, we have pseudo-reporting and pseudo-criticizing. Or, as Husserl explains, the semblance of philosophizing seriously with and for one another. It is philosophizing where one philosopher communicates something to another. Husserl believes that philosophy lacks discussion, conflict, and dialogue. It is not a futile exchange of views, but an authentic dispute. As a consequence, the crisis entails a lack of cooperation among philosophers, striving to work out common solutions. On the other hand, the aim of such cooperation would be to obtain a more precise criticism of one's views, so that these views are better and more resistant to criticism. A solitary research should therefore give rise to a phenomenological community which would develop a common philosophy by means of its practical actions and make philosopher perennis possible. In other words, once we understand the methodological foundations of phenomenology, we can gain an in-depth understanding of the phenomenological movement as such. This being said, I do hope that during the following days, we will not deal with, as Husserl would say, pseudo-reporting and pseudo-criticizing. Instead, I believe that we will hear valuable papers and even more interesting and thought-provoking exchanges. Once again, I want to welcome you to the conference and wish you fruitful discussions, interesting presentations, and in general, rewarding doing the phenomenology of sociality. At the end, I would like to express my thanks to the on-site committee for making huge efforts to organize the meeting. I suppose that many of us would prefer to meet right now in Ljubljana, but the current situation made this impossible. Given this, I'm especially thankful to the on-site committee for the last changes and for organizing the meeting online. Thank you for your attention, and once again, thank you, the on-site committee. Thank you.
So thank you very much for this, for the lovely short presentation of how the way phenomenology can sort of extricate itself from some of the critiques that are often addressed to it, and prove that it has a lot of relevant things to say also about the social dimension of the human being.